It's not quite a Kriegsmesser, and it's not quite a longsword. What is it? It's the Ronin Katana two-handed longsword number 10. Hello everyone and welcome back. We have another sword review to take a look at here today, and what we're going to be looking at is this really cool offering by Ronin Katana. Now, just to clarify something before I go forward, Ronin Katana is the name of the company. It is not the type of sword. This is a two-handed medieval style longsword offered by the company Ronin Katana, and it is number 10 in their lineup of European swords. Ronin Katana is well known for making Japanese style swords, wakasashis and katanas and whatnot, but they also have a line of European style swords, and this comes from that lineup. I had someone ask me the other day why it was a medieval sword, but it was called Ronin Katana, a Ronin Katana, but that's not the case. Ronin Katana is the company that produces these, and I will put a link down below in the description box where you can find this sword and their other offerings, including their Japanese swords, if you're interested. So, what do we have here today? We have a really interesting sword to take a look at, and also a very cool sword. I have done some testing with this, I've done my review, and I have a lot of opinions about it, and we're going to get into that here today. Now, this is a $275 sword, so it's well within the budget range when it comes to purchasing functional reproduction swords on the market. Now, you will take a look at this thing, and it has this long, swept saber hilt blade, but it's married to a longsword style construction hilt. And we're going to look at the hilt in greater detail as well as the blade. But one thing I want to note about this sword and how it represents itself on the market is it's quite unique. It has a blade that is a lot like a medieval Kriegsmesser, but the hilt is a hilt that is a lot like a longsword. In fact, it's pretty much a longsword hilt. So basically what we have here is a hybrid between a messer or a Swiss saber style blade and a longsword hilt. And there's not hardly anything like this on the market. Trust me, I looked all across the internet for something like this, definitely in this price category, and I could not find anything in this price category. Now, there are some high-end offerings by a company called Landsknecht Emporium, which has a model called the Falca, which I have actually pre-ordered. Can't wait to get it. I think it's going to take something like 9 months to produce. But anyway, that is a traditional German Kriegsmesser, and it's designed to be with all the details and whatnot that go into the construction of a Kriegsmesser. But that's a much more higher end sword than this. It costs probably about 4 to 5 times what this one costs. So that's not really comparable to this, but it is out there on the market. The other option is something produced by Albion, or was produced by Albion, and I can't remember the actual name of the sword. If you check out Skelligrim's channel, he does a lot of reviews and videos using that particular sword, but it's an Albion Kriegsmesser, and it's also extremely expensive. Once again, 4 to 5, maybe even 6 times what this sword costs. And then there is a sword by Dark Sword Armory that is a Swiss saber, which I would love to get my hands on. I'm thinking about getting one for a review or for my personal collection, but we'll see. Anyway, my point is, there is really nothing on the market that is like this. Cold Steel produces a German Grossmesser, but it doesn't have this curved blade that some of the Kriegsmessers of the medieval period actually had. It has more of a straight blade, and it's not really like this particular sword. So the point is, there's nothing out there that's really like this. And if you're into this sort of messer design or Swiss saber design, this is a fantastic option, or one of your only really good options out there on the market. So I just wanted to get that through before we go into the review of this really cool and interesting sword. Okay, let's talk about some stats on this sword. So we got a 33.5 inch blade that has been through hardened with 1075 high carbon steel. It's relatively stiff, but as you can see, it does have a decent degree of flex. It does have a nice degree of distal taper. It's very gradual and it runs throughout the blade right to the tip where it gets quite thin. The sword weighs in at about 3 pounds 2 ounces, so it's not particularly heavy and it's not super light. It seems to occupy a very good spot within the weight range for this type of sword. But I will say that the mass distribution is awesome on this sword, and that lends itself to being a very nice handling sword. So it's very nimble. You can actually move it quite quickly, and it feels incredibly awesome, guys. I do have to say, the balance of this sword is one thing I noticed right when I picked it up for the first time out of the box, that it feels lively and nimble. And you can also use this sword one-handed, no problem. It's actually quite nimble whether you're using it one-handed or two-handed, which kind of makes it like a bastard sword when it comes to the length of the grip. But as you can see, the grip is actually pretty long. If you're holding it with two hands, you could easily get a third hand inside there, maybe even a hand and a half inside the middle here. So it does have essentially like a long sword grip, and I love to grip this thing by the pommel down here. And we're going to take a look at the hilt, and then we'll go up and take a look at the actual blade and talk about details on each one of those parts of the sword. Okay, so let's take a look at the hilt, starting with the pommel. Now, the pommel shape is awesome. Basically, it's like a hexagonal shape. And it is peened right here, you can see. So it has a peened construction, which is awesome. And I love this pommel, guys. It's very aesthetically pleasing and nice to look at. One thing I will note is that these particular ridges right here are not really that sharp. They have been sort of rounded off so that it is actually very comfortable to hold. I suppose they could be a little bit more rounded off. I feel like these pieces, the cross guard and the pommel, are machined and not cast, which makes me believe that they're probably some type of alloy that has stainless properties to them, because they actually, in using the sword, I haven't seen any rust or staining on these particular pieces. So it has sort of a brushed satin finish to it, and like I said, it looks machined, but the pommel is a good size. I assume it's a good weight, and it is pretty comfortable to hold. I didn't really find it uncomfortable in any way whatsoever. Now, what I will mention is that the transition between the pommel and the grip, which you can see here, there is a ledge right here. You can probably see it really good right there. It's there. It's notable. It's not really nice to look at. However, I usually grip the sword right here, right over the pommel area, and I didn't notice any uncomfortableness or hot spots there. So, you know, something to note in terms of fit and finish, that, you know, there is a ledge there in the transition between the pommel and the grip. Now, taking a look at the grip, it is a leather wrapped grip that is stitched right here. You can see that it has a raised stitching line right there. I actually didn't notice that being uncomfortable at all. It's not particularly sightly, but it is, you know, it's a stitched leather grip, and I didn't find this uncomfortable at all. So it's worth noting that although it is very visible and prominent, it's not uncomfortable to hold. The leather that they used is rather cheap. It doesn't feel particularly like high quality leather compared to some other swords that are in the higher price range, but that's kind of what you get for a sword that is sub $300. So, you know, it's worth noting that it has a little bit of a grain grain detail here, and the grip itself is fairly oval and narrow in this direction and wider in this direction, as you can see, and it does taper down over here. It's actually very comfortable to hold. It feels very nice in the hand, and it's very easy to index and get your edge alignment correct. So as in terms of its shape, and design, it's actually very nice. I just wish that they had used a little bit of a higher quality leather and maybe paid attention to a little bit more detail in this area here. But, you know, we'll talk about that a little bit more. Now, this white residue right here, please don't mind that. That is from sword polish. My sword did not come that way. Looking at the crossguard, this is a pretty basic standard crossguard. Now, I know that they use this same guard on a number of their medieval swords, and you know, it's perfectly serviceable and nice. I mean, it looks nice. It has the same finish as the pommel, and you know, it's very standard. It has these rounded quillions here, and it's you know, there's really not too much to say about it. It's very standard, and it looks nice. I wish it were a little bit thinner. I don't really like guards that are very, very thick. This one is not excessively thick or anything like that, but you know, I just wish it was a little bit thinner. There is a gap in the crossguard, which you guys can see right there. That's not surprising considering the price range of this sword, but I will say that everything is rock solid. There is no movement whatsoever, even after my testing. So, all in all, a relatively nice hilt. Okay, let's talk about the piece of this sword that really shines, the blade. It came with a pretty nice polished finish. As you can see, it's almost like a mirror polish. It's very nicely done. And the shape of it is got a slight curve to it, a lot like a Kriegsmesser. And that's actually one of the things that drew me to this sword. In terms of its looks, and I love Kriegsmessers. I think that they are fantastic. So the blade shape is quite unique, and as you can see, we already talked about it. It has a thin fuller that runs right up the back edge 3/4 of the way, and one of the things I really, really like about this blade is the geometry of it. It has, because it's single-edged, it has the ability to have a fairly thicker spines and have it start tapering down early, right down to the edge, sort of like in a wedge shape. And Ronin Katana did a fantastic job with the edge geometry on this blade, and I think more swords should be this way. I mean, it's got a very thin amount of material behind the edge, which lends itself to fantastic cutting. Now, in terms of edge sharpness, it came sharp, I will say, and some of the cuts you'll see in the test footage, the test cutting footage, are actually done with the factory edge. However, I noticed it could have been a little bit sharper, which is once again not surprising. It's not surprising for any functional sword, as I'm starting to figure out. So I actually did have to put my own edge on it, which was very, very easy to do, and it took a fine edge very nicely, and now it is super razor sharp. I can attest to that, guys. And so the blade does have distal taper, which is very nicely done. I think I had already mentioned that, but it's done properly, and you can tell that these guys at Ronin Katana truly understand blade design, and I think it comes from having a lot of experience designing and creating curved blades, because they are known for creating Japanese style swords, wakasashis and katanas, and you can see that expertise in this blade design. It is perfectly well balanced, guys. There's really nothing I can fault about the sword on the blade. The tempering is good, the flex is good, pretty much everything about it is spot on. This is a fantastic blade for the money on this sword, and yeah, I wish more companies would do their sword blades like this. So A+ on this blade, guys, and you know, you're about to see it in action in a minute. All right, before we move on to the test cutting footage, which I really want to show you guys, I just want to say that I do want to confirm one thing, that the grip is actually a wood core grip, and the reason why I know that is in a certain lighting that I just saw, I was looking down into the gap of the crossguard, and you can see the top. It's very, very small, but you can see it there. You can see the wood underneath if you look through the gap here. Now that is also an indicator of actually just how wide this gap is here. It's not super wide, but you know, I did already talk about it, but I just wanted to confirm that it is a wood core a wood core grip that's been wrapped in leather. And once again, like I said, everything is rock solid. I don't feel any movement whatsoever. All right, so now that we've seen the pieces of the sword and its different features and its details, let's take a look at the test cutting, which I had a lot of fun with, guys. So yeah, check it out, and then I'll come back and give you guys my my final opinion on whether or not I can recommend this sword. All right, everyone, as you can see from the test footage, I had a lot of fun cutting with this sword. This is a fantastic cutter, and it handles beautifully. This is one of those swords that, for me at least, that when I took out of the box for the first time and I started handling it, I knew I was going to like it right off the bat. It's very well balanced. It's very nimble and lively, and I love it. It performed extremely well, even with the factory edge, but even when I put my own edge on it, it was even better. Some cuts were just effortless. It's very comfortable to use, guys, and I really So what are the things that I think can be better with the sword, or that I did not like? Well, you know, it's a sub $300 sword. So what do I think can be better? You know, the quality of the leather could be better. The detail of the finishing could be a lot better. These machined elements to the sword, I wish that they were made of mild carbon steel that were hand forged. You know, but that costs more money and more time. The gap in the crossguard, although this is a solid construction, I do wish that it was a little bit tighter. Also, one big thing that I haven't mentioned yet is the scabbard or sheath that it comes with. This is not really a scabbard. This is essentially just a soft leather sheath. It's just stitched leather panels together. It's very, very basic, and it's very uninspiring. I don't know if a scabbard can be inspiring, but anyway, it's not very good. However, it is nice that you get something that comes with the sword where you can store it safely, so that you don't hurt anyone, yourself, or if you want to transport the sword. This does the job fine. However, in terms of a scabbard, I wish it had come with a wood core scabbard, like a lot of their other European swords do. Maybe they thought that it cost too much to justify the price. I'm not really sure, but anyway, you do get this. And I wish that this was a lot better, a better offering from them. But hey, for a sub $300 sword, I guess you can't ask for the world. As it is, in its particular price range. It's pretty good quality, and it's done very, very nicely. So yeah, I just had to say that. I think that this sword is worth the 275 USD that Ronin Katana is asking? And I'm definitely going to have to say yes. This sword occupies a spot in the sword collecting or sword enthusiast market that is very underserved, and it's essentially a lot like a Kriegsmesser or a Swiss saber, but it's more of a hybrid between a longsword and a messer, and that has to do basically with the hilt. This is a longsword style hilt. Messers are not constructed this way. They're very unique in their hilt construction. So Ronin Katana basically just took their designs or their expertise in creating longswords, put a longsword hilt with a messer style blade or a saber style blade, and it's awesome, guys. I do have to admit, and there's nothing like this on the market. If you guys know of anything that is like this, in this particular price range on the market, that is functional and is very well built like this sword is, and can do the things and handle the way that this sword handles, let me know, because I haven't been able to find anything. I think this is the only thing out there, and it's fantastic. So I highly recommend it. It's a very nice sword to have if you don't want to spend the money for the higher end swords that are kind of like this. Great job, Ronin Katana. This is an excellent piece, and I highly recommend it, guys. Now, I do want to state one thing before I end the video. If you are interested in this sword, and you do go to Ronin Katana's website, they do have a message up saying that they are in the middle of doing a lot of forging right now, and that if their swords are out of stock, they will be in stock by the end of October. So as the last time I checked, this sword is out of stock, but they are planning to do a major restock by the end of October. So you should be able to pick one of these up at that time, probably by October, November, if you're interested. Thank you very much, guys, for coming by and watching my video. Please leave a like and subscribe if you like what you see here today, and stay tuned for future videos. Have a safe week and a good day. Bye, guys.